We are here with Quentin Tarantino, the prolific and Academy Award-winning writer, director, and most recently best-selling author. Today we will discuss with Quentin and his music supervisor, Mary Ramos, the musical processes of Death Proof, Jackie Brown, and Inglourious Basterds. Thank you so much. We have so much to talk about. I want to first talk about music as a character. So when you watch your films, you see the beautiful focus on like your vinyl or your jukebox in Death Proof, or the lingering fingers down the Delphonics cassettes. So do you consider music as a character in your films? And then which comes first, like the song or the written scene?
Oh, that's a good question. It's well, I've always just considered, like from the time of just going to movies and seeing them as a young man, that the combination of like the right pop song, it doesn't have to be a pop song, but especially pop songs, the right pop song with the right scene just always had a special cinematic kinetic kick that no other really kind of scene has. I mean, I remember going to movies in the 80s, there would be some really well done use of a song in a sequence, and they built the scene around the use of that song, and I'd see that movie 3 times just for that one scene.
Right.
And so I've been lucky insofar as I've had enough of a budget that I could actually afford to get songs. If you remember, that could not have been the situation, but luckily it was. So I was able to experiment with pushing that cinematic aspect forward with the songs. But as far as like which comes first, it's back and forth. I mean, one of the things about it is if I know I'm going to use music in a film, and that's going to be part of it, the music is it's a key to the personality of the movie. And when I say, it's the personality of the movie, but it's also the beat of the movie, the rhythm that the movie's supposed to play at. So if I come up with an idea that I think is a good idea for a movie, usually I sit on it for a while and just kind of let it grow and grow and grow. And then when I start actually, hey, I might actually do this. This is actually something that I could spend the next 2 years of my life doing. My first stop is I go into my vinyl room, and I have a little room right off of my bedroom. And
it's not a little room.
I've heard about
it's a
this
big
room.
Yeah. Well, it used to be like, I think for the people who lived there before, I think it was the nursery. All right. I turned it.
Your nursery.
Yeah, I turned it into like a used record store. All right. So it's all done in bins and stuff. And so first things first, I just start going through my records. I start going through my records and start pulling records that have songs or soundtracks that have really interesting pieces of music that could be what I'm looking for.
And this is when there is already a scene that needs to be.
No. I'm talking about just when I'm just thinking, hey, this might be a script I write. This, so I've thought on about it, and maybe I've written one scene or so, but I haven't like 100% committed to it. But this could be the next movie. And then so I go in to see if is there any music that I find that like pushes me even further in that gives me more of a clue to the beat of the film or the rhythm of the film. And then usually once I find 3 or 4 songs that I can imagine really being in the movie, especially something that could be the opening credit sequence, well, that goes a long way to actually helping me discover the story and like thinking, okay, well, let's take this to the next step, which is usually sitting down and writing it.
Incredible.
Yeah, and there could not be a better example of that than these 3 movies, because each of them have such a different cadence, such a different beat. And he's talked about going into his room, and he's got everything set up like a record store, and it's all the sections, right? So you have a soul section.
Oh, yeah, totally have a soul section. So, yeah, I mean, I would actually probably say that the most influenced by that the way I'm describing is probably Jackie Brown, because I knew I was like doing this. This movie that's going to be jumping off from blaxploitation movies, and like thing that I think a lot of people think of when they think of blaxploitation movies is the really groovy soundtracks that went along with them, and and I have a whole blaxploitation section, and so I just started digging through there and digging through my my soul collection and pulling out stuff and then just, how about this? How about that? How about this? And then came up with about 4, 5, 6 songs already. Not all of them made it into the movie, but it was like, this is the beat that Jackie Brown needs to play at.
So I'm curious, when you're going through all these different songs and something doesn't make the cut, do you reserve that for a later spot? Is it somewhere in your psyche?
It can, all right, if it's appropriate, for another movie. But usually, and there are definitely a few songs that are like, oh, that won't work here, it will work there, and something else. But usually, they're pretty specific to that movie, and it might be a heartbreak that we don't end up using it. It's usually fairly specific to that given movie, even though that has happened a couple times.
Excellent.
Like Strawberry Letter 23.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which was in Pulp Fiction for a nanosecond,
For just a nanosecond.
And then an amazing
then we
Jackie
built
Brown.
it all around. We built an entire sequence around
love
Strawberry
that
Letter
sequence.
23.
One of my
Me too.
favorites. So
One of my favorite uses of your music is just the irony in it, and the melodies and the lyrics juxtaposed against the visuals. It's always hilarious. So, is your go-to source of humor music for you?
I don't know if I would describe it that way, but the thing about it is, I try not to have stuff be on the nose. I mean, normally when I see a use of a song that is really on the nose and is literally describing exactly what we're seeing, all right, it usually suggests that they don't understand how to use music in movies. Now, I have done that from time to time, but there's usually an ironic aspect to it. Or sometimes it is describing what's going on in the screen, but that's obviously not the intention of the song. So like the fact that the lyrics to Cat People can go with exactly with what's going on screen, but he didn't write the song. David Bowie didn't write the song about a Jewish girl fighting Nazis in World War II. He wrote it about cat people. But when you look at it in that context, it sounds like David Bowie wrote the song for Shoshana.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, that was, I wanted to touch upon that, the Bowie use in that montage of Shoshana getting ready. Like, how did you find that song?
Oh, well, I've always loved that song, all right? I always thought that was a really great song.
From the soundtrack.
Yeah, exactly.
Not single.
No, we made it a point to use the soundtrack version, not the single version. But the thing is, though, and that's always the thing that we're dealing with, because we usually have 3 different versions hopping out there, and it's usually my soundtrack version that we use, like for a Jackie Brown Street Life. No, it had to be from the Sharky's Machine soundtrack, not the 3 different versions of the single that came out. In the case of Cat People, now actually I actually rather like Paul Schrader's movie Cat People, but it's completely infuriating to me that he had one of the best songs written for a movie in the 80s and he doesn't really use it in the movie. It's like he just slaps it on the closing credits and like, Jesus Christ, you have somebody write a song that's like that fantastic, that's much of a barn burner, and you just throw it against the closing credits? I mean, what the F?
Exactly.
So as far as I was concerned, it hadn't really been used yet cinematically. That had yet to be done.
And to your point, actually, I still noticed on Spotify the Death Proof Coasters version of Down in Mexico is still wrong. It's like you have to get the exact specific recording that came off of.
No, there's a whole story behind that particular Down in Mexico one too. Yeah.
So all of your music, it's very intentional. There's never like background filler. I can't imagine you saying, "Mary, we need something to play in the background," for this scene. Like everything is very specific and for purpose, as much as your sound design. Everything is intentional.
I mean, there might be like a soundtrack section from a soundtrack that I use that's more of a mood thing to kind of fill in the silence, but rarely a song.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there was one time on Pulp Fiction when you called from the set and said Bruce wanted to sing something in the car.
Oh yeah.
So it was like we raced and like we had just put together this tape of stuff and like sent it to the set, and we were like, ooh,
Right. Yeah. He has to sing it on camera, so that's we needed to get the rights right then, not later. Yeah.
Can you tell me, either of you, a fun anecdote of how you chose a song?
Down in Mexico.
Yeah, Down in Mexico. Okay, that's a good story.
For the lap dance.
Yeah. Because, so we're using that for the lap dance, but the thing about it is, that's a very, very special version. It's not the 50s version of the Coasters doing Down in Mexico. like in like 78 or 79, I was in a used record store, and they had this thing like the Coasters versus the Drifters, you know, and had one of those as seen on television. So it was one of those album that they were pushing
K-Tel
on.
or
Yeah,
whatever,
it wasn't K-Tel, but it was like that kind of thing. And I remember I bought it, and I was working at a movie theater at the time, and I showed it to the projectionist, and he's like, he goes, look at this. This is bad news here. This is bad news. See, not the original versions. So it's probably just, you know, some version of the Coasters that was going on in the 70s and some version of the Drifters that was going on, which means somebody was a drifter and somebody was a coaster. All right, but the rest of them were new people to the band. And so, well, that sounds like a drag, right? You know, oh, you want the original ones. Well, their version of Down in Mexico on this one little effing record that like came and went in the 70s is drastically the best version of Down in Mexico I've ever heard. It's really soulful, and normally I like the sound of 50s recordings, but that always kind of, to me, seemed canned by comparison. This was expansive, and it almost felt like a live version almost to some degree, and it was just a really soulful version.
Loose, it's kind of loose, yeah.
But there's no finding this record again. I mean, like, and so literally, it's just like I knew I had the only version of this. I mean, there might be a few other people out there, but this is not a record people knew about. So I knew I had what I considered the greatest version of that song. And if anything ever happened to this record, that's it. It would be gone. And so when I thought about putting it in Death Proof and setting the lap dance to that, I go, well, great, now I can finally use that version of the song in a movie. But then I go, but then we'll put it on the soundtrack album, and I'll save it, all right? So it's not just counting on my one vinyl, which if it gets a scratch, that's it. All right, now it'll be on my soundtrack, and so other people can get it, and it'll be saved for history. For that weird 1978 alliteration of the Coasters.
I mean, one of the best scenes ever. But which leads me to my
Yeah, I was going to say Inglourious Basterds. We keep forgetting Inglourious Basterds because there's so many amazing things in that as well. Mm-hmm. We actually translated a song from Hey Diddle Diddle.
Hi Diddle Diddle, yeah. The Man with the Big Sombrero, yeah.
And had it re-recorded, translated from English to French, and then had it re-recorded and replicated.
Yeah, I really liked it. There was a song from one of my favorite movies from the 40s. It's a comedy called Hi Diddle Diddle, and this was this is a different soundtrack for us because we couldn't just turn on the radio and hear pop songs on this, even though we do have a couple of pop songs in this. All right, but it's more or less built into the time period. So I went through really cool German pop albums from the time, like Zere Leander, and then there's the song from that movie Lucky Kids.
Exalted.
Yeah.
I wish I was a hen.
I wish I had a chicken. Yeah, that song. And then I go, well, all those work, and they're terrific actually. And I go, well, we need something else in that vein. And The Man with the Big Sombrero is from the 40s, all right? So, well, let's just do a French version of it. And so we had it translated in French, and I think we got Sam Shelton, to sing it, and it worked out great.
It was amazing.
It worked out it was really charming.
And how was the clearance process for that?
Oh, it was fine. It was fine.
It might have even been public domain by the time you got to it.
It was not.
Oh, okay.
It was a little more.
But it was a really long old song, so I'm sure it's only the children are getting money from it. All right?
Yes. It was the heirs. A lot of times in these situations, I'm tracking down the heirs and getting them to sign in triplicate. But
If you want to know how much it costs, she shields me from it. She's the one who knows the cost on all of them.
I don't tell them any of that stuff. Yeah. I don't tell them anything like, I can't find Santa Esmeralda. I can't find Leroy Gomez.
Well, you found him and became best friends.
I brought him to this premiere.
And then how do you choose all the incredible music in your films, and then what makes the cut to the soundtrack? There's a filtration process.
Well, it just it's a movable feast. It just keeps moving on and on and on. So like when I'm writing the script, I find songs okay, well, this has to work. This absolutely has to be in the movie. And as I'm doing it, as I'm writing the script, every time I need a pick-me-up, all I need to do is just go into my record room and play some of those songs, and then I just start seeing those scenes in my head, and it invigorates me again. I'm ready to go the next 9 miles, when it comes to writing and or imagining the finished movie. I'm always like especially if I'm building a sequence around a movie, not just a groovy song, but building a sequence around it. When I put the needle and pace around in my room, I'm like sitting in a movie theater. It's like I'm sitting in the palais, the Grand Palais of the Cannes Film Festival, and the movie's playing for the very first time. And I'm imagining the audience watch the movie, and that scene is playing, and the song is playing, and I'm just, cutting together the sequences in my head. Actually, when I actually shoot the scene and I'm editing it together, it usually pretty much falls into place because I spent so much time imagining it that way. Right. It usually ends up really working really well. But there's all those songs that I think about that I need beforehand, and then I come up with ideas while I'm shooting the movie of songs to throw into it, and then. And then some of those work and some of those don't. But then now I'm editing, and now then I come up with more ideas, or maybe I change an idea, or maybe we try something else. But it just keeps happening. So there's a whole thing that happens in pre-production, and the whole thing that happens in production, and the whole thing that happens in post-production.
And you play music on your set. You're really musical, more so than other directors too. You play music on the set just to inform the actors' bodies and to get them in the vibe, and
And I heard you make your actors mixtapes.
I've done. I have done that.
Tapes.
Right.
Yeah, I have done that.
They have to have cassette players.
Yeah, I have done that. I think the best mixtape I ever made was for Bridget Fonda's character in Jackie Brown for Melanie. I literally made just a complete tape of like the stuff Melanie would listen to.
What was on it?
And it was. Midnight Confession. Midnight Confession was definitely on it.
Undone,
and when we listened to Undone was on there. And but from that tape, we decided, well, we've got to have the Grassroots. That's got to be the song that Melanie's listening to in the Volkswagen van.
Is there a situation, like how do you decipher whether silence in a scene will be louder?
Well, it's just it just becomes a function of the storytelling. Sometimes it's fun to have a song play. Sometimes it's fun where it's, no, I'm the director and I'm playing a song on the soundtrack. Or it's somebody turns on the TV, or somebody turns on a record player and it's source music that's playing. And sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's movie music that I've sourced from another soundtrack, or sometimes it's nothing. It's just, it's the sound of the Venetian blinds, hitting the window, or the little rat that's trapped in the the glue trap, and or some weird ticking sound going on.
But like the music, as you said, is a character. The music isn't just thrown in there. There's nothing ever just squeezed in. We have a sad story about a song that was written for Django Unchained that just you could not find a place for it, and it was an amazing song.
It was an amazing song.
He's not going to just stick something in that's not, doesn't have a purpose. So every song has a meaning and a character, basically. I mean, rewatching Jackie Brown last night I rewatched it. Was like just amazing, because the way you use it. Strawberry Letter 23. Again, the way that Orgel is listening to it in the car, it shuts off. He goes around the corner. You hear it off in the distance. And then it shuts off the car, and then it starts up again. It's an opera, basically. That movie is a blaxploitation opera, because that whole section with the montage.
Well, it was also great, just the idea, though, that I'm doing this kind of tribute to Pam Grier in the course of the movie, and because I've seen all of her movies, I know that in the Women in Prison film, The Big Dollhouse, she sings the opening theme. All right, 99 years, and she does a really, long time woman. That's what it's not 99 years. It's long time woman.
What she says. 99 years.
Yeah, and it's like, and it's terrific, and you see her being processed to the county jail. I go, well, that's great. We got to have you use that. That song of Pam singing it, and it'll be great in there, and it'll be great on the soundtrack. as happy as I was with the other soundtracks, there was something really special about Jackie Brown that I had my own blaxploitation soundtrack. And actually, I had the soundtrack to all the other Pam Grier movies. So I had the soundtrack to Coffee. I had the soundtrack to Foxy Brown. I had the soundtrack to Sheba Baby. I had the soundtrack to Bucktown. So to actually be able to put them on my wall and then put my Pam Grier blaxploitation soundtrack right next to it was really cool.
Oh, amazing. And he uses some of the stuff from Coffee, some of the score from Coffee.
Oh, yeah.
And there was...
Well, that was an interesting thing because that was the thing where in Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, I didn't have any like movie score. It was just source music or music I decided to play. So no movie music. And then when we were doing Jackie Brown, the producers came and they said, Quentin, I know this is not how you've done it before, but I kind of think this one needs a little bit of movie music. And I go, well, I'm not going to hire somebody at this late date to do some slapdash soundtrack, score. That's not, the day I start using score ain't going to be that way. And then they go, well, is there some movie that you like that has a good score that you could just buy the tracks and we'll license them and just put them in there? I go, well, that's a thought. That could happen. And I had the Roy Ayers soundtrack to Coffee. And I go, well, that could work really cool because that's not me hiring, not to say this wouldn't be fun, all right, but that's not me hiring Danny Elfman and say, okay, can you give me a 70s blaxploitation vibe, or anybody else for that matter to do that? No, that is a blaxploitation vibe. That's Roy effing Ayers. And that actually, it's not an art film meditation on a blaxploitation soundtrack. It is a blaxploitation soundtrack. And I was working at the time with my editor, Sally Minky, so we tried one track, and we put it on the movie. I go, what do you think? She goes, well, I really like it, but now we need more. Okay, that worked so good that we need to do that about like 6 more times.
Okay, cut to, they're on the mixing stage.
Yeah.
And he's like, I need this, this, and this. I'm like, wait, how many days do I have? You have 3 days to clear this before we final the mix, right? And these things had never been licensed before. They'd never been like really used outside of it. It's the first time anybody really had done that. So one of the tracks was that they basically just said, no, you can't have it.
How did you get it?
Okay, it was Roy Ayers, and the guy, Harry Whitaker, was a piano player. He co-wrote the song. And the publisher said, we lost track of him back in the 70s. I was like, what's the last number you had? It was a New York number.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, Manhattan, jazz musician. I started calling and it was in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
Calling all the jazz
like
clubs,
the Blue Note and this,
all of in New York City, and found him. He was going to play there the next night.
Oh,
and I said, can you please have him call me? So that's how we got that piece of the music.
That's great. That's a great story.
That's an excellent story.
Well, no, she did a situation.
I know.
She did a
Google.
She did something very similar to that in the case of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where I wanted to use this track from a movie called Catalanian Little Britches, but there's no soundtrack made for it, and there's no master of this song. There's a video cassette. I had a video cassette, which had like Burt Lancaster talking over it. All right, but that's all I had, and that was the full orchestra version of not orchestra, but the full big version of this piece of music. And so, and it just shows how good our sound people were. They were actually able to take the piece of music from the video cassette and get rid of Burt Lancaster at the same time. So we use it once. But I go, is there any version of it that just does exist without, just not taken from a good time videotape? And then, so she gets in touch with the composer.
Facebook.
Yeah.
Facebook. Found him on Facebook. I mean, through various channels.
Yeah. And she's like, hey, look, do you have a track that's a clean track of that theme? He goes, no, I don't have a clean track of that theme. It's just whatever exists in the movie. But then he goes, well, look, I wrote it. I remember it. I can play it for you acoustically on guitar and send that to you. And she goes, yes, that's a great idea. Do that. Do it. And so, and then it ended up being perfect for the movie. It was great to have like the full version, which sounded great. You would never know that it was taken from a video cassette, but which sounded great. But then actually the one acoustic version is the creepy version.
Yeah.
And that's the one that really kind of has the most power in the movie.
Very cool.
So let's talk about what articulates to you when something's working. Like, what do you want to emote from the audience? Like, let's take Death Proof, the opening title of The Last Race by Jack Nicci. What did you want to emote from the audience?
Well, I wanted to kind of put them in this badass 70s car movie kind of vibe, something like Vanishing Point or the original Gone in 60 Seconds, something like that. And the thing about the Jack Nicci song "The Last Race" was I didn't know that it was ever done as like a 45 kind of drag racing type of single, because that piece of music, Jack Nicci's "The Last Race," was used, I think, before it was released as a single. It's the theme to the movie Village of the Giants. And so I always remember it from Village of the Giants.
Right.
And I always love the opening credits of Village of the Giants. And it has, these teenagers eat some food that turns them into giants. And then it's them, just in slow motion, just rocking out. And it's a really great sequence. And the music is amazing. Then somewhere along the way, because I'm always a big fan of Jack Nicci, I was where I got a lot of my original pressings of 45s. I was at Antone Records, and I found The Last Race, and I go, well, what the heck is this? And so they had turntables there, so I put it on. I go, hey, could you put this on? And they put it on. I go, holy moly, that's the theme to Village of the Giants. But it had like car noise in it. Brum, 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 I go, well. And I'm shooting Death Proof in Austin at the time, all right? And I go, well, that's the opening credits right there. And, and as much as I like Village of the Giants, it does seem more appropriate as a piece of car music. So to me, it's like that was that was that theme getting used the way it always should have been used. Similar to the Cat People.
I was just going to say, just like Cat People.
Right.
You do it best. So let's go back to Inglourious Basterds. Do you think the use of Morricone spaghetti western themes, did that help the audience understand Jewish soldiers as avengers and heroes rather than victims? Was that your intent in it?
I've always been into spaghetti westerns, and each one of my movies is jumping off from that operatic, that Italian operatic aspect that Morricone brings to his stories. And but especially dealing with something like World War II and dealing it in a more fable kind of aspect, it seemed appropriate to bring up to do it spaghetti western style, where it's larger than life and it's big opera, but as opposed to using the iconography of Mexico and westerns that you see in spaghetti westerns, I'm using the iconography of World War II. And like swastikas and Jewish oppression and just all those kind of things, and then adding my own, like the baseball bat and all that. And so it has that mythic, larger than life aspect of spaghetti westerns, and then makes it. But where what you just said makes sense is it's played in an operatic way. So the French farmer and his daughters. Are there, and then the Nazi convoy of cars approach, and no, they feel like this little Western family, out in the middle of nowhere, and as these opposing outlaw force comes towards them.
He uses some Morricone in Death Proof as well, Paranoia Prima.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. But just,
that probably the most spot on of the horror sequences,
right.
Which is that's from a Dario Argento film, and it's just like when Butterfly just sort of notices, like, she's seen the car once, and then, oh, wait a minute, that car's in the parking lot. Oh, the guy's here? Oh, that's creepy. All right.
So excellent.
So a lot of your filmmaking is about a mashup of styles, an homage to films, and there's a lot of cultural references in that. Do you do that intentionally as sort of like a hidden meaning with the Insider Tarantino club?
Well, yes and no. It's like, look, if you're me, or if you're in the, you're a film fan and you've seen some of the stuff that I've seen, well, then you're going to appreciate it, or not, all right? But you might resent it, being like, I know what it took this time, all right? But you'll get it on one level and appreciate it on one level. But if you've never seen it before, then you just look at it and appreciate it in a whole other way.
Right, and service value.
It has to work in both ways.
Yeah.
It can't just work one or the other.
So I want to know now, in today's day, when you're walking through an airport or you're in a bar and you hear one of your songs, like maybe a song that was so difficult to get licensed, or maybe something that you just love from one of your films, what goes through your psyche when you're hearing it in a different setting?
Okay. Anytime I'm in a bar or a club and then they start playing You Never Can Tell, all right, on the dance floor, I'm usually groaning. Oh, God. And it's like I enjoy it and I'm groaning, okay? As everybody on the dance floor is like doing this. It makes me cringe, but I also appreciate it at the exact same time.
I mean, okay, I have to say, down in Mexico, it was after the Grammys. Coco and Holly and I went to Jumbo's Clown.
When someone played Down in Mexico?
Oh my God, the woman did an amazing dance to your version of Down in Mexico.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a specific version,
excellent,
not
excellent.
like the old one, but it was an amazing dance.
Okay, well, I gotta say, the people who have the most license to use my music are strippers. Please, feel free to build entire dance routines, all right, on that. That is always a compliment of the highest order. That does not make me cringe.
But listening to Battle Without Honor or
which
is Theme for New Jingy, which you renamed.
Yeah, right.
I mean, just hearing that everywhere.
Oh, well, no.
From Kill Bill.
That's ended up being
kick-ass swagger theme.
Yeah, no, that's the one that's ended up being used as parody again and again and again, because it just evokes like these badass chicks in Kill Bill, and so like the third or fourth Shrek movie used it. A Team America used it. I think one of those spoof movies used it. Like commercials used it. And it's always evoking Kill Bill. That's the point of doing it, actually.
Yeah. Do you ever hear that stuff and go, I should be getting up?
No, I've made enough money from these movies. I don't need to own everything.
That's a very good point. He's a fan of artists. He's a fan of music and a fan of artists. He's not gonna
And which brings me to as a total cinephile yourself, what is a marriage of music and film that you think is super cool and that you love to watch?
Besides his movies?
Besides yours.
Oh, there's quite a few. I mean, like a movie that sort of I think is definitely a precursor to both. I think almost my style way before I ever made a movie. This is kind of a precursor to both my style and the way they use music in the film was the Richard Gere version of Breathless. All right, with Jim McBride, and that they never even did a soundtrack album for that, but actually the screenwriter of it, Ellen Kit Carson, gave me a tape that they made that was the a stand-in for the soundtrack. But the way they used like the Link Ray music as actual score, and I mean it's just really really terrific. And so every use of that is great. But like for instance, like to me, a standout scene in a movie where they play a song and I think was terrific is James Tovac's movie Exposed with Natasha Kinski, and she has a scene where what's the song is the Shoop Shoop song, I think. If you wanna know when he loves you so, it's in his kiss.
Yeah.
I don't think it's called In His Kiss. It's the Shoop Shoop song, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's just like her. And it's just her, like she's just moved into a new apartment in New York, and so it's kind of lofty. And she just puts on the song, and they play the whole song, and it's just her dancing around the apartment, and it's all done in jump cuts, and it's just really it's sexy and charming, and it just takes you on a ride. And again, that's one of those things where I saw that movie 3 times just to see that sequence again.
And then what's a soundtrack that you listen to from start to finish?
Oh, I got a few of them. Why don't you start?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. No, I got to think about that. Well,
No
actually, no.
fast-forwarding.
Lady Sings the Blues by Diana
Oh, yeah,
Ross.
yeah,
My
yeah,
God.
yeah,
Listen to that when I was a little kid. Never saw the movie before when I finally saw the movie, I was like, oh, that's what they were talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, heroin. So, but I could do all the dialogue from it. I mean, just freaking, and Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, yeah, well,
Zeffirelli.
the Zeffirelli Romeo and
Yeah.
Juliet, or like the John Barry, I think, or is it Francis Slay or
Francis
John Barry?
Zeffirelli.
Oh, Francis. No, I know.
Oh,
he's
John Barry.
I think he wrote the theme, didn't he? Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Francis Lai, one of the two. A soundtrack. I have so many. Well, okay, I'll just say one that just comes to mind that I was a real big fan of when because I was a fan of the movie when it came out, and I love it. I know, and this is definitely one that I don't skip it around. Is the soundtrack to Sylvester Stallone's movie Paradise Alley. Yeah, it's really cool. Bill Conti wrote the movie music in it, but like Stallone even sings the theme song. All right, it does an okay job. But one of the things that's really cool about it's a very charming soundtrack. But also, it has two original songs by Tom Waits in it. And in 1978, I didn't know who Tom Waits was, as a 16-year-old. So I learned who he was because he had a small cameo in the movie. But to me, I know him from the Paradise Alley soundtrack. And so then later, when all the hipsters knew who he was and was talking about it, I go, wow, you've never heard the song Meet Me in Paradise Alley.
Has there ever been a song that you haven't been able to get that you want to use? And I know there's talk about you perhaps not doing another film, but that you haven't been able to get, but you want to use in an upcoming project.
I mean, there's a few songs still hanging out
What?
there that no, there's a few songs hanging out there that that like if it was if I had the right story and the right scene presented itself. No, I'm not going to tell them. I'm not going to tell them. All right, that would present itself. That would be great. So yes, I'm sure there's a few songs like that. We've gotten pretty lucky. All right, because. Look, we don't go after we used a Rolling Stones song in the last movie we did, but we tried to steer away. That was a special occasion. We tried to steer away from those big high ticket item songs. And since we steer away from that, or the people that might be more jaded about giving us songs, that usually the artists we approach and the record companies we approach, because we've we have a nice track record, and our albums tend to do pretty good. It's like, oh, well, yeah, okay. It would be cool to have our song on a Tarantino soundtrack. That'll last for a long time. So usually it's it's been for the last 15 years it's been easier than it used to be. Okay. And there's been a couple of things I remember, like especially early on, where when on Pulp Fiction, when they dragged Marcellus into the back room and rape him. We wanted the Knacks, My Sharona.
My Sharona, right.
Right. And it came time to do the movie, and the Knack had to think about it, and they had two offers on the table. They had
Reality Bites.
Yeah, they had Reality Bites, and then they had a rape scene in this movie called Pulp Fiction. And so they went the Reality Bites route.
Because the kids are like dancing in the gas station or whatever.
And then had also the situation where on Reservoir Dogs.
Steelers Wheel.
Yeah, we got that.
Right.
That one we got. Okay, we wrote like the letter you wrote. Right. We wrote a big letter to Pat Lucas, who ran EMI at the time, and she allowed it. And it was a big deal allowing it, because it's going to take place in a big violent scene. But we had the right kind of people talking to her, and we wined and dined her, and she was a wonderful lady. She did it.
Yeah.
So then I have another sequence in the film where they're beating up the cop. They're not torturing the cop. They're just beating him up to get information from him. And I thought it would be really cool to put that to the Grand Funk Railroad version of Locomotion, which was written by Carole King.
Yes.
And so I brought up to Pat. Pat's visiting the set that day because we're like, oh, this Pat Lucas Day. She's visiting the set. We're really treating her like, but she deserved it. She helped us out in a big way. And I go, hey, so I know you also own the Carole King library, and we're thinking about using the Grand Funk Railroad version of Locomotion in the movie. She goes, okay, well that would be great. Yeah, we could do that. As long as it, but just as Carole King, she's a kind of a hippie type and everything. So as long as there'd be no violence in the scene. Well, if the dogs are beating up a cop, would you consider that violence? Yes, Carole King would consider that violence.
But I mean, he's not the kind of director who's going to like pick something that he's heard on the radio or, I was listening to Sirius FM, recently and I found this song. He's the kind of guy who's going to hand me a homemade video cassette tape of a 1970s Japanese television show and go, this little piece of music, not the main title, this little piece of music here, I want that.
From the Shadow Warriors, all right? Yeah.
Thank you. And I mean,
well, I gotta say, of all the things that you tracked down and got the rights for, that was to me the most impressive. All right, when it wasn't just we just went for it and see if they would sue us or not. All right, no, you did actually. You went down the rabbit hole of a '70s ninja show and found like the Vengeance theme.
And by the way, I do not speak Japanese.
Yeah.
So that adds to it. So it's that people often ask me, Quentin Tarantino, he picks all of his own music. He writes with music in mind. What do you do? And I go, whoa, okay. What I make sure is that
he has wild ideas and I make them concrete, all right?
I take what's in his head and I make it so.
Yeah. And I make it legal and concrete and they don't sue it and own all of his stuff.
So they don't sue you. Exactly, so they don't sue him. So
I do the hard work. He can dream up the little building. I build it.
You make it come.
She's the brick and mortar woman.
That is correct. People often, like the Academy won't add music supervisors to the music branch. We don't belong in the music branch. We're like at large or whatever. And so because they don't know what music supervisors do, and oftentimes it's there's the creative vision, but there's also the freaking
But she'll suggest this song or that song, and sometimes that works out, or even in a situation I go, look, I don't think I need something specific here, but can you come up with about 4 or 5 songs from this era that like will be really easy to license? It's not going to break the bank, or and then like. Yeah, sure. Here you go. All right. Yeah. She goes back and like a lot of the stuff that was playing in Jackrabbit Slims.
Yeah.
All right. It's an official 50s kind of. It's official 50s kind of music, and it was really cool and it was neat. But it wasn't like the big ones that are on K-Earth all the time, and they were cheap.
Yeah. Or I'll give you like the cover of Who Is He and What Is He to You by Michelle and Degacello. And he'll go, wait. Bill Withers is better than
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I love Michelle. Exactly. Love her version, but Bill.
What's the collaborative process creatively? Like, do you go through a script and then you write ideas?
Oh my God.
Or is it always?
Yeah, it's normally it's like she's read the script. She has an idea of the script, and then she comes to my house and she sits on the couch in my record room, and then I just DJ for her. I just play this song and that song and this song and that song and this song, and give her an entire soundscape of what I have for the movie up until now. Now maybe only like a third of those songs end up being in the movie, but this is what we're starting off with. This is what I'm thinking about, and and I also know as much information as she can get, as soon as she can get it, the better she can do her job.
Yeah, it's pretty. I look forward to those sessions. They're amazing because, as you know, he doesn't talk slow. So I have to be a fast writer. But it's also it's like a.
But I also know even though music is her life, I know I'm blowing her mind because I'm playing her stuff she's never heard before.
Yes.
Okay.
A lot of the time.
Yeah.
Have things been vice versa? Has she brought something to your ether?
Oh yeah. No, absolutely.
But mostly the other way. Well, that's what I want to know. Is like I want to know what you put on when you're floating in the pool.
Yeah.
Like what's the kind of stuff
Or
you
driving.
listen to?
Yeah.
Do you have mixtapes or do you have like Like a lot of people like let Spotify pick it for them. Do you like, do you play a whole album? Do you like, what's the stuff you?
Well, in particular in my car, because I still have a cassette player in my car.
What kind of
So-
car do you have?
Which kind?
It's a Mustang. It's a Mustang.
That's
It's a
the
Mustang.
question.
Yeah, it's a cool Mustang. I
Right.
mean, not it's a retro Mustang,
Right.
but it's cool.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, I really loved making tapes for people, and I'd still do it, but now they don't have tape players to play them anymore, and I judge them all severely for that. All right, but I still have a tape player in my car, so I make mixtapes for myself, so I can play in the car. But like what I've been playing for the last 2 years is when we were doing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I got like 13 hours of KHJ recordings. And so that would have like a whole hour of the recordings with like all the commercials and stuff. And so, so I went through it all to choose what I was going to use in the movie, but I had much more than I was going to use in the movie, but I made my own version of like all the best songs and the best DJ bits and the best commercials. And so I kind of spread that out through about 4 different tapes that I have. One of the tapes made the movie, but there was about 4 different ones, and that's pretty much what I've been playing driving around Los Angeles. Is like an hour of Robert W. Morgan, or an hour of Charlie Tuna, or an hour of Sam Riddle.
I assume your tapes are not called Quentin Summer 2021.
No.
What are they called?
Oh well, those ones are easy because it's KJ. It's like the real Don Steele. All right.
Feelings.
Yeah, 1969.
Emo.
Flip it over and it's Robert W. Morgan in the morning, February 14th.
And what were you listening to when you drove over here?
No, one of those. I was
One of those,
listening to
okay.
one of the KHJ tapes.
And those KJ tapes, did you press record and play at the same time
No, yeah.
when you played this?
When I made them,
Yeah.
Well, I have a stereo thing that still has the 2
The
tape
2.
players in
Yeah,
there,
no,
and you
I've
put it
got
on the
that.
thing, and you take it off pause. But but when the researchers got me those 14 hours of KHJ things, they were all put on DVDs. But literally, it's not from some KHJ archive they got it. No, it was just like a fan in 1969 put their tape recorder right next to the radio and hit play record for an hour.
And that's what you hear on the
Yeah.
soundtrack too. You
That's
hear
fantastic.
that quality, that everything.
Yeah,
That's one thing.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, because like we took all of we took all of our cues from those DVDs that were made from cassette tapes, and and so the sync isn't 100% right the way they would be from a master CD, because we're dealing with however the guy or a girl who did that in 1969, however good their batteries were in their in their hand tape recorder. And so we go and we've been using those tapes for our whole scratch track, and so we put it in the movie and we cut to it, and then we actually get the original songs and I go, well, nothing syncs up anymore. Okay, it's got a whole different sync because it's not based on these things. So we have to throw all this new all the masters out. They actually have to be from those tapes.
All this clean stuff out. We gotta
Yeah.
But that's
not the first time we've done that. We make it a practice of doing that.
And that's the thing that's cool about you is you want your audiences to hear things the way you hear them. So like when you got mad at me for cleaning up, I think it was Slaughter.
Yeah.
Okay, Slaughter, the way it is in the movie was taken off of your.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Radio
it's a different version, and a far inferior version.
It is
if you
pretty
ask me.
cool, yeah.
But in the case of Death Proof, a good 3/4 of the songs in Death Proof are taken right from the jukebox, Amy, that's in the movie, which is my jukebox, and
Which you had shipped there.
Yeah, which you had shipped there. And the thing about it was, so I wasn't just choosing, when it comes to the Texas Chili Parlor, I wasn't just choosing any old song that came up. No, it has to be a song from Amy's Jukebox. And there was a couple of reprint golden oldie kind of 45s in there, but most of the 45s were original pressing, original label 45s that were bought in Antone Records in Austin, which would be perfect for the Texas Chili Parlor since it takes place in Austin.
Yeah.
You know, it was, you know, so it was important that like the Pacific Gas and Electric's version of Staggerly,
Yeah.
all right, you know, is the original label 45, which is actually the B-side to Are You Ready,
Yeah.
which was the hit.
Do you play music? How did
No.
you become such a music aficionado?
No, well, just growing, being a kid who's into radio and music and pop culture and albums, yeah, it just goes with it.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
So
and
when
it
you
is.
hear, you know, if you're somewhere in a mall and you hear a song that was so difficult to license, but it's yours, is it PTSD? Is it pride? Is it, where does it take you?
Well, it's nostalgia and it's pride, pretty much, because I know all the blood and hair that went into getting
Yeah,
that.
right, yeah, right.
So, you know.
Well, one of the things I'm like really proud about is something like, okay, in Jackie Brown, we use an album cut from Minnie Riperton's album, Adventures in Paradise.
Inside My Love.
Inside My Love. And, you know, that was never a hit on the radio. And it wasn't even on her big album. It was on my favorite album of hers, which is the second album. And it was just a really good album cut. And we used it. And then because of its prominent feature in Jackie Brown, both on the soundtrack and in the movie, then you listen to these jammin' oldies stations or these soul oldie stations, and I've heard them play that Minnie Riperton song as if it were a hit, but it wasn't, but kind of is now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of the cool thing is he doesn't get to see some of this too that I see is that the people that we do track down out of the, you know, boonies or whatever who he uses one of their songs, their lives are kind of changed by not kind of, their lives are literally changed, and they get hooked back up to revenue, and it's like kind of amazing. The same kind of thing he does for some actors. He's done for musicians, and it's been kind of
that happened with Larry Gomez, with
Yes.
Santa Esmeralda.
Yes. And
no, it's amazing. Now, the thing that you keep asking these questions about, like, okay, so when you're walking through a mall and you hear something that you have an associate with, how do you feel? Okay, this doesn't bother me, but it's the thing that makes that gets the biggest reaction from me is when a piece of music or a song that I've used in a movie, and then I know that I've repopularized that song or that piece of music, and then I see it in this commercial. And then I see it in another commercial. And then I see it, that's a big one, And then I see it, and that one, like, I've seen that in maybe 10 commercials, all right?
Dude.
And I'm not chagrined. It's actually letting me know that we were effective. It had impact, and it put it out there. But, but maybe I get a little chagrined, but at the same time, I'm thinking, oh, wow, well, good for that artist. Okay, they're making more money from that commercial than they ever got from us. All right, so good for them. All right, so we didn't have to pay for it, but we created a revenue for them to probably really cash in.
Yeah, you've resurrected livelihoods.
Yeah, I mean, God knows how much money the 5, 6, 7, 8s have made from
Oh
you.
my word! From you going to a vintage store in Tokyo
Yeah, absolutely.
and hearing.
No, okay, I'll tell this story.
Sure,
all right.
go ahead.
Okay, it's so I'm in Japan doing pre-production work on Kill Bill, and there was a vintage clothing store that was passing by that looked really cool. And literally, like, I'm going to go to the airport in 45 minutes, and I'm just taking a walk around Tokyo at that time. And okay, so like in 20 minutes, I'll go home. I'll go back to the hotel and get ready to go. And I walk into this vintage store, and they're playing. I can't remember if they're playing Yoo-Hoo exactly, but they're playing this 5, 6, 7. They're playing the 5, 6, 7, 8s, and I've never
Rockabilly covers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I've never heard them. I go, whoa, this is really cool. And I go up to, and there's a slight language barrier, but they can speak a little bit of English. And I go, who is this that you're playing? And they go, well, it's the 5, 6, 7, 8s. I go, can I buy this CD? They go, no, it's not for sale. It's the owner's CD. Look, I might be able to use this in a really interesting way. Okay, I'm being so rude as far as the Japanese is concerned. I can't tell you. You don't impose yourself on people there. It's just not done. And I'm like, well, can you call the owner at home and ask him if he will sell the CD? Well, yes, I guess we could. Well, then can you do it? Because I really only have 20 minutes. And they go, well, look, if you go to the warehouse, no, that's not going to work. I'm going to leave. And that's just not, I want to buy this one. And so, like, I mean, as far as they were concerned, I was, like, just incredibly rude. But they did it. But I knew that the 5, 6, 7, 8s would be appreciative of me pushing the point. And so they called up the owner of the store, and they go, look, this guy, I think it's Quentin Tarantino, he wants to buy the 5, 6, 7, 8 CD. Can we sell it to him? Yeah, sure, go ahead, you know. Well, how much? No, sell it to him for 6 yen. Okay, fine. All right, here you go, thank you. But the thing is, if that guy hadn't have sold me the CD, that would not have been in the movie, because I wouldn't have stayed in my head. I would have, at the end of, I'm literally going to the airport, so at the end of a 13-hour flight, I'm not going to really remember that. But I had it, and I remembered it, and like now, then they're in the movie, and it was, you know.
Yes, rockabilly females, yeah.
Yeah, it was terrific, and it really all fell down to the guy who I never met, who owned that store, just agreeing to sell me the CD.
Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. Just your brilliance in film for the past 3 decades, it's immeasurable. And the marriage of music in film, it's always stunning. So it has been such an honor to discuss with you and with Mary Ramos the whole musical process and taking us on this journey.
My better half.
So thank you so
not even. But this has been really fun for me too, because it really, I got to rewatch these movies, and it's been a minute, and they are
Yeah,
for
I just
very
revisited
different
them
reasons,
also.
so good.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And more details and
Well, I'm really
now
excited
put them back
about
on the big screen.
Yes, no,
Make that happen.
I'm really excited. Well, we play them all the time at the New Beverly. All right, you got to come to Los Angeles. But,
Yeah.
we play them a lot.
The New Beverly.
The New Beverly. Yeah.
No, but it's great that these soundtracks are being available on vinyl
Yes,
again. It's
absolutely.
awesome.
Very good. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.